The galaxy had always whispered about humanity. In the age of light and silence, when civilization spoke through stars and wars were fought with data instead of blood, humans were a rumor. A primitive species from a small blue world, reckless enough to burn their skies, yet stubborn enough to reach for them again. For centuries, they had been silent. No transmissions, no ambassadors, no trade convoys, just Earth spinning in solitude wrapped in clouds and mystery, and that silence frightened the galaxy more than any fleet, until the day the silence broke. A signal, faint but certain, rippled through subspace, a human voice, clear and deliberate. "This is Admiral Elias Rane representing the Terran Union. To all who hear this, we remember." Those words carried across the void like thunder. Within hours, every listening post from the core to the outer rings reported the same pulse. The Council of Worlds gathered in emergency session, ancient halls trembling under the weight of dread. The humans had spoken again. Among those who heard the message was Lyra Vess, a Zenthari diplomat stationed on the neutral moon of Halar Prime. Her species had long prided itself on empathy, on reading the emotional hues that shimmered around every sentient being. Yet when the human signal played in the council chamber, Lyra felt something she could not interpret, something cold, vast, and determined. "What do they mean, we remember?" asked Chancellor Rithar, his frilled head bowed low, voice quivering through the air. No one answered. For in the depths of every mind present, memories stirred, of a time not found in official archives, of ships vanishing near Sol, of rumors that the humans had been wronged by the very council that now sat trembling. The galaxy had built its peace on selective forgetting, and humanity, it seemed, had remembered everything. On Earth, the skies burned silver with launch fire. Admiral Elias Rane stood on the observation deck of the Terran Orbital Command, watching as the First Fleet lifted from the cradle of humanity. Columns of fire streaked into the upper atmosphere, reflections dancing across his tired eyes. Behind him, Commander Mira Solon stepped quietly, her uniform pressed but her voice trembling with awe. "They'll see us as monsters, sir," she whispered. Rane didn't turn. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, where dawn painted the clouds gold. "Then they'll finally see us," he said softly. "Not ghosts, not myths, just men and women who learned too late how much peace costs." He remembered the Silence War, the unspoken conflict that had erased entire generations. The Council had called it an adjustment, a containment. Humanity called it betrayal. They had reached for the stars with open hands, and those hands had been burned by fear. Now Earth had rebuilt, not with anger, but with resolve. The old wounds had become fuel. "Fleet Aegis is ready," Mira said. "We await your order." Rane nodded once. "Then we march, not for vengeance, Commander, for truth." Across the stars, panic spread like wildfire. On the crystalline world of Alara 9, citizens gathered before hollow screens showing endless streams of human ships rising from Earth's orbit. The news anchor spoke in hushed, fearful tones. "They are mobilizing. Every Terran city, every shipyard, every outpost, they are all awakening." In the core systems, senators debated sanctions and blockades. In the outer rings, smugglers whispered of fleets seen training in silence for years. Everywhere, fear grew like frost. Because humanity was doing the unthinkable. They were uniting. For millennia, the galaxy had thrived on division. No species had ever truly stood as one. But humans, imperfect, impulsive humans, were gathering under a single banner, forged not from conquest but conviction, and the galaxy watched, spellbound and horrified as a sleeping world opened its eyes. Lyra Vess sat alone that night, gazing up at the stars through the transparent ceiling of her quarters. She had read every archived file on humans. The wars, the art, the laughter that persisted through ashes. And she felt an ache, a strange yearning as if some part of her envied them. Her mentor's words echoed in her mind. "They are dangerous because they care too much." She finally understood. Far beyond, a fleet of 1,000 ships aligned over Earth. Silver hulls gleamed beneath the moonlight, their formation like a constellation reborn. And in the heart of that armada, Admiral Rane's voice spoke again. "To the galaxy that forgot us, humanity is coming, not to destroy, to remind." The stars seemed to hold their breath. The march had begun. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, silence fell like ash. No delegate spoke. No translator hummed. Even the ever-chattering archives paused their whisper of data streams. Humanity's return had done what no war, no disaster, no prophecy had ever achieved. It had united the galaxy in fear. Chancellor Rithar's voice finally broke the stillness. "How many ships?" The analyst's mandibles clicked nervously. "Confirmed. 2,000 orbital craft, Admiral-class command signatures, and long-range carriers. And the number is increasing daily." A murmur rippled across the chamber. The glowing sigils of hundreds of civilizations flared uneasily around the room. Each represented a world with its own history, its own pride, and its own guilt. Ambassador Veteran of the Kale Dominion hissed through clenched teeth. "They can't have built this in silence. Not without help." Lyra Vess, seated at the observer's circle, raised her gaze. "They built it with will," she said softly. "That's the part you've all forgotten." Dozens of eyes turned toward her, alien and uncertain. The Zenthari were known for calm neutrality. Lyra's tone was anything but. She continued, voice trembling but steady. "You fear their ships, their engines, their weapons, but you should fear something else entirely. You should fear their memory." Far across the void, Admiral Elias Rane walked the command corridor of the flagship Sol's Vow. It was not a beautiful ship. Its armor bore no decoration, no gilded edges. It was forged from dark steel, shaped by purpose, not pride. The kind of vessel that didn't seek glory. It promised consequence. At his side strode Commander Mira Solon, eyes shadowed by fatigue. "Status report," Rane said. "Fleet Aegis. Vanguard and Horizon report full readiness," she answered. "Supply lines steady. Civilian support unwavering. Recruitment has surpassed projections." Rane slowed. "Unwavering?" Mira nodded. "They're not afraid, sir. Not of the fight. They're afraid of being forgotten again." That silence weighed heavier than any weapon. Humanity's deepest wound was not loss, it was neglect. To be erased, not defeated. To cry into the void and hear nothing answer back. Rane placed a hand on the cold steel wall beside him. "Then we'll make them remember us, not through destruction but presence." He stepped into the command chamber. The walls glowed with the soft light of 1,000 holofeeds, faces of men and women waiting across a dozen colonies, their eyes reflecting determination that no empire could crush. "Admiral on deck." Ron raised his hand. "At ease," he said. Then his voice deepened, calm but resonant. "My friends, they call us monsters. They call us relics. They will tell their people that we rise in anger." He paused, eyes glinting. "But I tell you this, we rise in remembrance. We march not for conquest, but to end the silence that killed our kin." Applause thundered through the comms, echoing across ships and stations. For the first time in centuries, humanity spoke with one voice, and that voice shook the stars. Lyra Vess couldn't sleep. She watched the council debates descend into shouting. Every world had its own solution: containment, negotiation, attack. But none dared admit the truth. Humanity's unity had exposed the galaxy's greatest weakness: division. "They'll destroy us all," hissed a delegate from the Sarli. "Dominion, they'll destroy themselves." "First," countered another. Lyra clenched her hands. "You don't understand. They've already survived destruction. What else can you take from a species that's lost everything once before?" No one answered. That night she opened her private terminal and searched for restricted records, files sealed after the Sol incident, the event that had led to humanity's isolation. When the screen flickered to life, her eyes widened. The truth hit like a tidal wave. The Council had indeed silenced Earth, cut off trade, blocked transmissions, sabotaged colonies, under the guise of preventing contagion. Humanity's growth had frightened them. Their adaptability, their defiance, their refusal to conform. Lyra leaned back, trembling. "You did this to them," she whispered. "And now they're coming home." In orbit above Mars, Admiral Rane stood before the observation deck, surrounded by his officers. Beyond the glass, the red planet glowed beneath them, its surface dotted with colonies reborn. Commander Solon turned to him quietly. "They'll fight us, sir. Every world we approach they'll resist, I know," Rane said. "That's why we'll give them something they don't expect." He looked up at the fleet, thousands of ships forming the shape of an ancient Terran symbol, a spiral of unity, encircling a single point of light. Send the message, Rane ordered, and across the stars his words echoed. We are humanity. We come not in wrath but in remembrance. Stand with us or stand aside. The age of silence is over. The signal spread like wildfire across every frequency, through every translation matrix. The galaxy listened, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the stars trembled. The first shot was not fired by humanity. It came from the Velnari defense line, a vast ring of satellites orbiting the frontier world of Tharos. A warning beam, brilliant and cold, lanced across the void and struck a Terran relay ship. It disintegrated instantly, silent, a single spark vanishing into darkness. The galaxy held its breath. Every transmission went quiet. Every diplomat froze. Humanity's response would define the age to come. Admiral Elias Rane stood before the holomap in the command deck of Sol's Vow, his face lit by the glow of the stars. The bridge crew waited, tense, expectant, fearful. Commander Mira Solin's voice was low, almost a whisper. They fired, sir. Rane's eyes remained on the holographic line that marked Tharos space. Was the crew recovered? Negative, Mira said softly. No survivors. Rane exhaled, a long breath that seemed to draw the air from the room. And the council's statement? None yet. They're calling it an automated defense response. A murmur passed through the command crew. Everyone knew what that meant, deniability. The galaxy's oldest form of cowardice. Rane's voice cut through the silence, steady as iron. Prepare a task force. But not for retaliation, Mira frowned. Then for what? For proof, Rane said. If we are to be condemned, let it be for what we've done, not what they imagine. On Tharos, the sky blazed with unfamiliar light. From the surface, Captain Leo Heron of the Planetary Guard watched through his visor as a fleet of human ships descended, dark and sleek, moving with the precision of a heartbeat. No plasma fire, no bombardment, just presence. They're not attacking, whispered one of his soldiers. No, Leo murmured. They're showing us they could. The lead ship touched down near the central plateau, and from its ramp stepped men and women in silver-gray armor, unarmed but unyielding. The air shimmered around them as though the planet itself held its breath. Their commander, a tall woman with short silver-streaked hair, removed her helmet. Her eyes met Leo's. Captain Heron, I am Ambassador Tessa Vorn, envoy of the Terran Union. We come to retrieve our fallen. Leo hesitated. You mean the relay crew? She nodded. Their ashes drift above your skies. We'll take them home. There was no anger in her tone, no threat, only quiet resolve, and that frightened Leo more than any weapon could. He gestured toward the control tower. You'll be escorted. When Tessa turned back toward her ship, a dozen Terran officers followed silently, carrying banners of mourning, black cloth stitched with a single white star. Across Tharos, millions watched the broadcast. No invasion, no fire, just humans, walking through alien soil, gathering the remnants of their dead with reverence. The galaxy's narrative began to crack. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. This is manipulation, roared the Kale Dominion delegate. They perform for sympathy. They perform honor, Lyra Vess countered sharply. Her voice rose above the din, clear and cutting. You fired first, and they answered with ceremony. Chancellor Rethar slammed his claws against the podium. Enough! You would defend them? Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, her empathic sense shimmering like light on water. I defend truth. And what I feel from them is not hatred. It's sorrow deeper than any of us can bear. The chamber quieted. Even those who despised humanity could not ignore the broadcast still looping in the air. Humans bowing over the scorched remains of a ship. Their faces unreadable, their silence deafening. Lyra whispered, You're afraid because you see yourselves in them. Back aboard Sol's Vow, the recovered ashes rested in a crystal urn on the Admiral's desk. Rane stood before it, hands clasped. Commander Mira approached quietly. The footage has reached every world, sir. They know what happened. Good, Rane said. Let the truth travel faster than fear. Mira hesitated. Sir, what if fear is faster? Rane smiled faintly, though his eyes were tired. Then we give them something stronger to follow. He looked to the stars beyond the viewport. Mira, do you know why humanity survived? It wasn't power. It wasn't unity. It was grief. We learned to carry it without letting it consume us. She nodded slowly. And what do we do now? We remind them, he said, that the ones who feel most deeply are the hardest to break. That night, as the Terran fleet departed Theros, the sky shimmered with the glow of their engines. No city burned. No army fell. Yet across the galaxy, every species watched the footage in silence. For the first time, they didn't see monsters. They saw mourners. And somewhere deep within the Council's archives, ancient fears began to unravel. The galaxy had expected humanity to rage. Instead, they grieved, and that terrified everyone even more. The galaxy's silence was no longer empty. It was listening. Every world, from the crystal towers of Ilara 9 to the dust-swept colonies of the Outer Rim, now spoke one name in fear and fascination: humanity. Their fleets had not burned a single city, yet their presence rippled through every network, every council, every restless dream. In the galactic archives, billions watched and debated. Some called it the March of Remembrance. Others whispered the darker name, the Second Dawn of Man. But none could deny it. Humanity had changed the rhythm of the stars. On board Saul's Vow, Admiral Elias Rane stood beneath the vast curved window of the bridge. Below him, Earth turned slowly, its oceans glimmering like a living jewel. The Terran flag shimmered in the void, not as a symbol of conquest, but of endurance. Commander Mira Solon entered, her voice hushed. "Transmission from the Council, sir. They request a formal dialogue." Rane did not move. "Request or demand?" She hesitated. "Both." He turned at last, his expression unreadable. "Patch it through." Moments later, the bridge darkened, and the holographic projection of Chancellor Rithar materialized, his reptilian features tense with suppressed unease. Around him shimmered the faint outlines of other council representatives, their forms ghost-like in the transmission haze. "Admiral Rane," Rithar began, voice stiff. "The council acknowledges the restraint of your forces. We commend your discipline, but your mobilization remains a matter of grave concern." Rane folded his hands behind his back. "Concern is not the same as understanding, Chancellor. You fear what you don't know. You always have." A hiss of disapproval rippled through the council projection. One delegate, a towering, luminous being from the Kyle Dominion, leaned forward. "And what should we understand, human? That you gather fleets not to conquer but to remind us? Your words are riddles cloaked in arrogance." Rane's gaze hardened. "No riddles. Only truth. We've returned because history was stolen from us. Because silence was used as a weapon. You erased us from your records, condemned us to isolation, and called it peace." Lyra Vess, seated behind the Chancellor, closed her eyes as he spoke. Every word was an arrow, measured, steady, and sorrowful. Rethar's crest flattened uneasily. "You would accuse the Council of conspiracy?" Rane stepped closer to the holofeed, his tone low, unwavering. "I would accuse you of fear, Chancellor, and fear left unchecked becomes cruelty." The chamber fell quiet. Even the translation units hesitated before resuming their soft hum. Lyra rose slowly. "Admiral Rane," she said, her voice calm. "What is it you seek?" Rane met her gaze through the projection. "Recognition. Not submission. We ask for no crown, no tribute. Only truth, and the right to stand among the stars without our name buried beneath your peace." Lyra nodded faintly, her empathic aura shimmering in shades of sorrow and awe. "Perhaps you ask for more than the Council knows how to give." Rane's eyes softened. "Then teach them." The transmission cut. The Council chamber exploded in argument. "They threaten us. They only demand their place. They will bring war if we refuse. They will bring peace if we listen." Voices overlapped like crashing waves until the Chancellor slammed his claws down.
"Enough. We will not be cornered by sentiment."
"Humanity must disarm or be contained." Lyra rose once more, trembling. "Contain them again, and you'll prove their every word true." The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. "You would side with them?" "I would side with justice," Lyra said, "because I've seen their grief. And grief that learns patience is more dangerous than hate." The chamber fell silent again. For the first time, the Council had no answer. That night, rain fell across the domes of Halor Prime. Lyra Vess stood alone beneath it, watching the silver drops slide down the glass. Her world had always been built on harmony, yet the echoes of humanity's pain now filled her mind like a song she couldn't silence. She opened a secure channel, fingers trembling. "Admiral Rane," she whispered when his image appeared. Rane's brow furrowed. Ambassador Vess. I've read the sealed records, she said softly. I know what they did. I know why you disappeared. Rane's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Quietly, deeply. Then you also know why we came back, Lyra nodded. They'll move against you, Elias. The Council will never admit fault. They'll twist the narrative until the galaxy believes you're preparing to strike. Rane looked down, the faintest hint of sadness shadowing his face. Then we'll have to show them what war looks like when it's fought for peace. Lyra's eyes widened. You mean to fight? Rane shook his head slowly. No, to stand, and to endure whatever follows. The transmission ended. Lyra stared at her reflection in the darkened glass. For the first time, she understood why the galaxy feared them. It wasn't because humanity was violent. It was because humanity refused to kneel. Above Earth, the Terran fleet began to move again. Graceful, deliberate, unstoppable. The galaxy watched, breathless. The storm had begun, but not with fire, with movement. Thousands of Terran ships slipped through the dark between worlds, not as conquerors, but as pilgrims. They bore no banners of conquest, no cries for vengeance, only the quiet pulse of purpose, echoing through every deck, every engine, every human heart. To the galaxy, it looked like war. To humanity, it was remembrance. In the command chamber of Sol's Vow, Admiral Elias Rane studied the holographic map of the Ecliptine Corridor, a narrow band of neutral space that divided the Council's core from the Terran frontier. On one side, ancient power, alliances built on centuries of convenience. On the other, Earth and her children, newly risen from silence. Between them glowed a single red line. The line between stars. Commander Mira Solon entered quietly, datapad in hand. Reports from our forward fleets, she said. The Council's patrols are massing along the border. No shots yet, but the tension's bleeding through every transmission. Rane's eyes narrowed. They expect us to cross first. To give them their excuse, Mira nodded. They've spread fear faster than truth. He turned toward the viewport where the light of distant suns painted his face in fractured gold. Then we hold the line, Commander, and make the stars themselves our witnesses. Across the border, the Council's Joint Defense Armada assembled, a tapestry of alien vessels glittering against the void. In the central command ship, Lyra Vess stood beside Chancellor Rithar, her gaze locked on the distant shimmer of Terran ships. They've stopped, Rithar muttered, frills shifting in agitation. Not advancing, not retreating, just waiting. Lyra's empathic senses trembled. They're not waiting, Chancellor. They're enduring. That's their nature. You've built an empire on fear of the unknown, but they've built strength out of surviving it. Rithar's glare sharpened. You speak of them as heroes. Do you forget what they are capable of? Lyra's voice was calm, almost mournful. No, I remember exactly what they are capable of. And so should you. Her eyes flickered toward the Terran fleet. They could destroy us in hours if they wished to. But they haven't. That should terrify you more than any weapon. Meanwhile, in the Terran fleet, engineers worked in quiet focus. Soldiers shared silent meals, their laughter subdued but real. Each of them carried a story. Of families who never saw the stars again, of ancestors erased from galactic memory, of songs once forbidden now sung softly in the halls of steel. Among them was Lieutenant Juno Wex, born long after the silence, raised on stories of Earth's exile. She stood before a viewport in her cruiser, eyes shining with wonder and dread. My grandmother used to tell me, she said to the ship's AI, that the stars forgot us. But I don't think they did. I think they just waited, the AI's soft voice replied, and now they are watching again. As the fleets faced one another across the corridor, small craft darted between envoys, couriers, desperate peace seekers. One such shuttle carried Lyra Vess. Against the Council's command, she crossed the line alone. When her vessel approached Sol's Vow, the Terran defense grid lit up like a constellation. But before a warning could sound, Rane's voice came through the comm. Let her through. Moments later, Lyra stepped onto the human flagship. The corridor lights glowed warm against the polished steel. Human officers watched her pass, curious, cautious, yet not hostile. She found Rane in the observation deck, staring at the endless stars. Ambassador, he said quietly, not turning. Admiral. Her voice trembled, but she steadied it. You're on the edge of war. He smiled faintly. No, Ambassador. We're on the edge of understanding. War is what happens when understanding fails. Lyra studied him, searching for deceit but found only exhaustion. And faith. The Council will never yield, Elias. They will protect their pride even if it costs every world between us. Then we'll protect the truth, he said softly. Lyra hesitated, then drew something from her cloak, a small silver data crystal. This yam was hidden in the archives, proof of the Council's order that cut you off centuries ago, the command to isolate Earth. Rane took it carefully. You're giving this to me? Yes, she whispered. Because if the galaxy must choose sides, I want them to know what side deserves to be remembered. Their eyes met, two souls bound by sorrow older than their species' quarrel. Hours later, a signal burst across every channel. The crystal's data broadcast to the stars, records, transcripts, orders, all undeniable. The galaxy saw the truth. Humanity had not turned its back on the galaxy. The galaxy had turned its back on humanity. Across the core worlds, shock spread like wildfire. In markets, in schools, in governments, truth became the weapon no fleet could deflect. And at the border of the Ecliptine corridor, where two armadas still faced one another in silence, something profound shifted. The line between stars began to blur. Silence shattered like glass. Across the galaxy, every world now knew the truth. Humanity had been betrayed, silenced, and erased, and now they were awake. In the core systems, the Council convened in panic. Holographic projections flickered with urgency. Senators shouted, claws and tendrils flailing, voices overlapping in chaos. They broadcast everything. Every order, every secret, every lie. Hissed one representative. Chancellor Rithar banged his claws against the podium, the sound echoing through the chamber like rolling thunder. Containment. Immediate sanctions. Cut their channels! Lyra Vess, standing at the observer's gallery, shook her head. You can't contain truth, Chancellor. You can only face it, and it's coming for you whether you like it or not. The counselors turned to her, eyes wide. You defend them? I defend what is right, she said, voice firm. And what humanity seeks is justice, not vengeance. Far beyond the core, in the black between stars, the Terran fleet advanced. The ships glided silently as if the void itself held its breath. On board Soul's Vow, Admiral Elias Rane stood in the command chamber, gazing at the endless void. Commander Mira Solon approached, voice quiet but firm. Admiral, they're preparing fleets, core systems mobilizing entire armadas. Rane did not flinch. Good, let them prepare. Let them see the consequences of forgetting. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Humans were not afraid of the fleets massing against them. They feared only that the galaxy might forget again, that silence might return. Rane turned to Mira. This is not war. Not yet, this is a reckoning, and it will be heard. On the planet Theros, where humans had once retrieved their fallen, citizens watched the news feed with mixed awe and fear. Cities that had celebrated humanity's honor now faced the realization that the human armada would not stop. They would march for truth, not conquest, but the very march terrified every ruler and civilian alike. I don't understand, whispered a Velnari child, eyes wide as the holoscreen glimmered with Terran ships moving like living constellations. Why would they come for us? Her mother shook her head. Because they remember what it is to be erased, and they do not forgive the silence. Back aboard Soul's Vow, Rane received a secure transmission from Lyra Vess herself. Her voice came through the intercom, calm but heavy with emotion. Elias, the Council is considering preemptive strikes. If they attack, humanity will defend itself. But if you advance peacefully, they may yet see reason. Rane exhaled slowly. Lyra, the galaxy waited 1,000 years to hear us speak. If they still refuse to listen, then it will not be our fault. Mira's voice trembled slightly. Admiral, we are the strongest fleet ever assembled. Yet even with all this firepower, you feel the weight of their doubt. Rane smiled faintly, a shadow of sadness in his eyes. Strength is nothing without purpose, and our purpose is remembrance, not destruction. Suddenly alarms blared across the bridge. The core systems fleet had fired the first warning shots. Lasers lanced through the void, harmless but deliberate, passing just in front of the Terran vanguard. The bridge fell silent. Rane's voice cut through the tension like steel. Hold position. Do not return fire. This is our test. Let them see who we are before they judge us by fear. Mira swallowed hard, but obeyed. The fleet remained still, engines humming in quiet defiance. From orbit, Lyra Vess watched through her shuttle's viewport. Her empathic aura shimmered brightly. She could feel it, humanity's grief, their resolve, their enduring patience. And she understood fully why the galaxy feared them. Because this was not just a fleet. This was a species that had survived erasure. This was a species that refused to kneel, and the universe had never faced anything like it. The core systems fleet hesitated. Their commander saw not monsters but humans standing tall, refusing to strike, refusing to beg, refusing to vanish again. Every pilot, every tactician, every soldier sensed it. The humans were beyond rage, beyond fear. They were unbreakable. The first salvo passed harmlessly. The Terran fleet did not respond. The silence that followed was more deafening than any scream. Lyra whispered to herself, "The fall of silence has begun." And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy realized the age of erasure was over. Above, the Terran flag shimmered in orbit over Mars. Below, every human heart beat in quiet determination. The universe would remember them now, whether it wanted to or not. The stars watched in silence. For 1,000 years, humanity had been a ghost, forgotten, erased, whispered about in cautionary tales. But now they were more than rumor. They were truth incarnate, moving through the void with steady purpose, not vengeance, but remembrance. Admiral Elias Rane stood on the bridge of Sol's Vow, his eyes fixed on the core systems fleet shimmering across the ecliptine corridor. Thousands of ships, hundreds of species, all staring at the humans who refused to bow. Commander Mira Solon stepped beside him, tension coiling in her shoulders. "Admiral, they haven't fired yet. But their hesitation? It's not fear. It's confusion." Rane nodded slowly. "Exactly. Confusion is the start of understanding. And understanding can end 1,000 years of silence." In the council chamber, Chancellor Rethar paced before the holographic screens displaying Terran formations. Delegates whispered, claws tapping, scales bristling with unease. Lyra Vess stood beside him, her empathic aura shimmering like a calm sea in a storm. "They are not coming to conquer, Chancellor. They are coming to remind the galaxy what we all forgot, that life, memory, and honor are worth more than fear." Rethar's eyes narrowed. "And yet their presence terrifies everyone. Why?" Lyra's gaze did not waver. "Because they survived when no one thought they could. Because they endured what every other species would have crumbled beneath. Because they carry too much, and we fear care when it burns like fire." On Theros, children watched the skies glow with Terran engines moving like constellations. Soldiers lowered their weapons in awe, uncertain of how to respond to a species that had taken the galaxy's silence and turned it into strength. Captain Leo Heron whispered to a fellow officer, "They could destroy us all. But they don't. They honor what has fallen. They honor truth." The officer shook his head. "It's impossible. They should hate. They should strike. Yet they give us hope." Aboard Sol's Vow, Admiral Rane activated the main communication relay. His voice resonated across every frequency, every translator matrix, every corner of the galaxy. "We are humanity. We come not to conquer, not to rule, not to destroy. We come to remember." The words traveled faster than any fleet. Across core worlds, outer rings, and hidden colonies, they echoed through every city, every station, every ear. Remember what it means to endure. Remember what it means to care. Remember what it means to be alive. The galaxy fell silent. Not fear, not awe, but something deeper. Reflection. Lyra Vess floated in the observation chamber of her shuttle, tears glimmering in her eyes. The truth of humanity burned like a comet through her chest. They had taken grief, betrayal, and erasure and transformed it into purpose, into power, into beauty. "Elias," she whispered into her calm, "you've changed the galaxy, and you've changed me." Rane's voice replied softly, yet firm, like the tide against a cliff. "We only reminded who it truly is. That is all." The council convened again, but the atmosphere had shifted. Words once sharp and accusatory now carried hesitation. Recognition, even humility. "Perhaps," Lyra murmured aloud, "perhaps the galaxy is ready to remember itself." And for the first time, the galaxy listened. Above Mars, the Terran fleet slowed, forming a massive spiral that reflected the rising sun. Each ship represented lives rebuilt, families restored, histories reclaimed. Humanity had not conquered with weapons. They had conquered the very narrative of existence. Commander Solon approached Rane. "Sir, what now?" Rane gazed at the spiral, his expression serene but resolute. "Now, we remind them that survival is not a curse but a promise. That memory matters more than fear. That humanity endures." As the light of distant suns bathed the fleet across the galaxy, species of every shape, color, and form paused in reverence. No treaties were signed, no victories proclaimed, no battles fought. Yet everything had changed. Humanity had walked among the stars and shown the universe a truth it had long forgotten. Survival is not measured by how many you destroy, but by how deeply you remember. And in that moment, for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy did remember. The dawn of remembrance had arrived, and humanity, standing tall among the stars, smiled quietly.